don't be a soft target. Right. It's like, don't put, some janky PLC that has all kinds of unauthenticated protocols and FTP and things like that, just completely on the edge and leave it up. Right. Do basic stuff like you always say. So secure that. Don't be a soft target, and then understand defense in depth.
You're listening to Protect It All, where Aaron Crow expands the conversation beyond just OT, delving into the interconnected worlds of IT and OT cybersecurity. Get ready for essential strategies and insights. Here's your host, Aaron Crow.
All right. Thank you again. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Protect It All podcast. We talked a little bit before we started recording, the irony of how you meet people around the world. I met Caleb while we were in Singapore. Come to find out, he grew up very close to where I grew up in Texas. So again, we meet in Singapore, and the town you grew up in, my family has a lake house there. I spent my entire life growing up there. It's a small town most people probably never heard of, but we both know exactly where it is, and it's just the irony of how small this world actually is. So anyways, with that, Caleb, it was great to meet you in Singapore, and thank you for taking time to join me again today, man.
Yeah, likewise. Shout out to Bird Island and Cedar Creek Lake. Not many people know, but go check it out. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell the audience who you are, what you do, like all the skinny, man.
Yeah. So my background is electrical engineering. I spent my whole life thinking I was going to be a power systems guy, and spent a little bit of time in that space, and ended up finding software in college. Really fell in love with software and actually writing it, which seems like so long ago. But did that, did a lot of embedded software development for products, and saw a ton of manufacturing in different types of environments for all kinds of devices. And then from there, really got pushed into cybersecurity and offensive security for embedded low-level parts. Did a ton of testing throughout the U.S. on medical devices and different networks and facilities. And with that, started a company called SolaSec in 2024, specialize in full stack cybersecurity. And we're very advanced. I mean, we do everything from taking apart a chip and looking at the power consumption and analyzing and guessing cryptographic operations based on power, all the way up to cloud infrastructures or supply chain, things like manufacturing lines or distribution facilities and things like that.
That's awesome, man. It's funny. I also went for electrical engineering, and here I am doing, technology and networking and cybersecurity and all the things. It's funny how we pivot. I talk to so many people that are sitting in the seat across, and, many times our careers go differently. And having 3 kids, directing them on, hey, you're 17. You don't know what the hell you want to be. I'm 48 and I don't know what I want to be. Like I'm constantly adjusting and shifting and growing and learning. So all those things. So man, it's the other thing we talked about that like leads directly into what you're talking about, right? Is all this OT stuff. Like a lot of the OT things in these worlds are really old. Like they've been around for 30, 40, 50 years sometimes, or even if they're new, they're not really new. Like it's stuff it was designed 20 or 30 years ago. Yeah, maybe I bought a brand new SKU, but it's the same PLC guts that's been there for, again, decades. And when you consider, things like, Raspberry Pis and all of this embedded components that are coming in, a lot of times as an end user, I'm going to a vendor and I'm buying a skid, and I don't know the components that are inside the devices. I just trust them. They plug it into my network. It does the thing, but I have no idea my hardware bill of materials or my software bill of materials or any idea of the components or the all of the dependencies that are running in that stack to know, am I secure when a vulnerability comes out? And I have no idea. And there's really not a whole lot of effort many times until something bad happens to get in front of that. And we know now with AI and everything else, it doesn't take much for an engineer to take, gear like I have behind me and say, hey, AI, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, this is the device I have. Help me configure it, hack it, find a way around to it. Like I can't log into it. Like, so how are you seeing that in the marketplace? Are people opening their eyes to just the vastness of all that is around them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, which is great. I mean, it obviously AI and the capabilities is astonishing nowadays, which you can do so quickly. And I think people understand in the hands of a bad actor, that could be devastating, right? But you hit on it before. I mean, I think that the real issue with OT and ICS, and it's across different industries. It's not just I'm more familiar with manufacturing, but it's everywhere. The issue is that 20 years ago this line was created. It was availability is everything. We wanted to get it working. Now don't touch it ever again. Right. And it's like you and I both had the conversation about, we love to do some security testing. It's like, okay, great. You've got, 1 minute on the, last Saturday of every other month to actually look at the device. It's like, this thing's got to be on the entire time. And it's sometimes running even critical infrastructure. So with that, you just get like these stagnant technology stacks and these different, PLCs that don't have any security. And then now you've got this giant ecosystem, and then add to that, everything's connected nowadays, right? So it's like you add connectivity to something like a PLC that speaks Modbus and does exactly what it's told or whatever, and now you've got major issues that are network enabled to these devices, and they'll do exactly what they want to do. So then what you get into is you start adding some network controls, which is great. That's a good first step that people should do. But my big concern is that there's so much of a threat surface behind that perimeter defense that we have to start, to your point, we have to start talking about defense in depth of the PLCs, the way that they're getting pulled into your actual facility and network, and understanding what the threat surface of this stuff is, because it's pretty significant on most of these things.
Yeah. And if you look at any one industry, and to your point, it's across all of them, right? The 16 critical infrastructures, non-critical things, whatever it is. I mean, you look at wastewater, you look at manufacturing and the number of assets and devices that they have. And in an IT world, I say this all the time to folks, and if you've never worked in OT, you may not get this, audience listener. Like in IT, if I brought in a Windows XP machine and tried to plug it into the corporate network, they're gonna be like, no, don't do that. Here's a brand new laptop. Use that. Right. And just throw that XP box, take it home, never plug it in this network again. Like, don't worry about it. I'll give you a brand new laptop. Like, don't worry about it. Right. But you can't do that in an OT world. And it's not that you can't. Like, yes, it is possible to replace every device that's in the world with a brand new one that speaks, multi-factor authentication and encrypted protocols and, is identity access managed, like all the things. It's just not realistic because there's so many of them out there. And you look at one site, they're going to have thousands of devices. And it's not just about replacing one, take one and swap it, but the logic that goes into it, the interconnections that go into it, the dependencies upon it. And I have to do it in an outage. Then I have to take my whole plant down. And then as I'm bringing it back up, like there's this domino effect of, coming from software, you understand the technical debt that we have in software development, right? It's the same thing in OT. We have all of this technical debt of things that we've handicapped and band-aided and duct taped and baling wired our way, and it works. Just don't look at it. I remember being in a plant, and there was a turbo control vibration monitor system, and it was in its own cabinet. And as we were going around, they literally would say, don't even lean on that cabinet, because if you lean on it too hard, the whole system goes down and it'll trip the unit. Like, I'm sorry, what? Like, why have we not fixed that? Instead, they put like tape around it and signs on it that say, don't touch it.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head too. It's like in IT, it's easy to kind of think about, a single device or a single, at least classification of a device, like a workstation or a laptop that someone's using. It's like, yeah, patch it. What's worst case? Like your availability, like, hey, maybe, something goes down for a day for that user. We're not super impacted. That service is gone for a day. It's not really the end of the world. But when you do that and something goes sour on a patch on like a critical Windows server that's running in an OT environment, it's like, okay, that gets knocked over. Then downstream PLCs get knocked over. Then the sensors and actuators down, like the idea that, the downstream effects and, you misapplying a patch to one thing could take down an entire line. It's like, it's not an understatement, right? It's well beyond a single device, because these things are all interconnected. And to your point, the person that might have installed that system retired 10 years ago, right? And we can't talk to him anymore, right? Like that's kind of the world that we're living in. And then add everyone's connectivity, everyone's the data available, right, to actually see the metrics and improve efficiency in their plant.
Well, and along with that, right, is the people side. So everything is a people, process, and technology. And when I was at the power company, I had a team of, 6 people. We supported 40 power plants across the state of Texas. As you know, Texas is big. We had them from Odessa to, Texarkana and Denton, Sherman, Paris, all the way down to, central Texas around Round Rock and Austin. And if you don't know Texas, people, open a map. Odessa is, 8 hours away from Dallas. And that's never left the state. That's still here. So we're at a big spread of power plants. And again, 6 people. My IT counterparts, they had hundreds of people and they had dedicated firewall teams and dedicated this and dedicated that. Many times you walk to a plant, whatever kind, manufacturing facility, you got an OT guy or gal. They are the ones that are responsible for it. They understand it. They're the person. They take their hat off and put their IT or their OT hat on. And then they take that off and go put their hard hat on and actually keep the plant running. Right. So they're only spending a part of their time, and they're also behind the 8 ball because their stuff is so old. So how do we expect these people to be able to keep up with? I've got limited time. I can work on things. I can't patch things because it's old. There's may not be patches available. I don't have any budget. I don't have anybody to help me. So what can I do when I have all of these things stacked against me?
Right. Yeah. And I would say something else that's just to me is incredibly fascinating is that I think there's an understanding of availability. It's the whole conversation we have. It's why we can't patch anything or touch anything. But to me, it's it's always a dropped opportunity for us as security folks to talk about these things in terms of uptime, because that's what it eventually boils down to, right? It's like these functional defects, if they're discovered by an adversary or if they're caused by, some sort of just even tampering, by a bad guy or even an inside actor that, doesn't even intend it, right? We're talking about downtime to a plant, and everyone, that's the thing that everyone can agree on is that downtime to a plant is the worst thing that could happen, right? Especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure or just the revenue hit, when you're not actually producing your product effectively. So I think, in terms of, where we get, I think, the one OT tester that supports the giant infrastructure that you talked about, or, a small, skeleton crew of folks that understand OT and IT and security and then facilities, right? That has to expand. You're right. There's nothing that they can do in often cases without, the budget and the personnel that they need. But to get the budget and personnel that we need, I think we need to start talking about the right things, which is not this ethereal, nation state type attack. It's like we're talking about real downtime as a result of pretty basic, 2000 to 2010 level vulnerabilities applied at scale, to these things that are, I don't want to be doomsday, but they're kind of sitting ducks, so really time is of the essence to get these things patched.
Well, and the other side of the coin is, so I used to work at a big, I won't even name it. You can look at my LinkedIn bio to see where it is, but, work for one of these really large Big Four consulting firms. And we did great work. I loved the company. I loved the team that we were at, but a lot of companies couldn't afford it. And it's the same thing on some of the product side, on the OT side, right? You look at some of the bigger players, and I love them. Don't get me wrong. I love, we're very vendor agnostic where I'm at Arcova. We work with all of the players you can imagine, but sometimes you're at a wastewater facility and they don't have budget for 100,000 or 50,000 sometimes for software, hardware. That's their whole budget for everything. They can't spend all of that on a product and have nobody to run it or could tune it or anything. So that's the other side of this coin that we have is the cost benefit of these folks don't have budgets, but they still need to do something. That doesn't mean you don't do nothing. So how can they do something in these spaces, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's funny you bring it up because we actually just released a tool that is hoping to solve this exact problem. So it's called OTPCAP. I'm sure we'll put a link somewhere for this podcast for viewers, but that's the exact problem we're trying to solve, right? The major, billion-dollar organization, absolutely, there are great tools that are out there. We're pretty vendor agnostic too. Go get one of those tools. You get a ton of real-time monitoring it's expensive, but it's needed in a big facility at scale. So I absolutely go get one of those tools. But for the folks that can't afford that, or the folks that are trying to get something started, we wanted to create a tool that was just really about, hey, you go get a packet capture of your network, set up a span port, go look at what's there, and then just analyze it, right? I mean, look for, bad traffic, go look for unencrypted protocols, go look for, these ancient deprecated things that shouldn't be existing on your network. And then the big thing is, I think first knowing where it's at. And then when you go in and start doing the network segmentation, it's like now you are more data driven. You're not just, isolating things. You're actually taking a specific data driven approach to put things in their guaranteed spot and quarantine them, while you can, have a process to, sunset some of those older deprecated technologies as well. So I think it all comes down to, do something, use our tool, feel free, but it's all open source. It's on our GitHub, but I mean, do something, to get an idea of what's even out there at first. Right. And that could be, a number of different technologies, solutions and tactics, to start approaching.
Well, I think that the point that I love that you're making there is that there's all sorts of things you could do, right? Don't do nothing because you can't afford the big guys. Don't do nothing because you can't afford EY. There's smaller firms, yours, mine, all of these other things that there's folks that that have the knowledge. There's open source tools you can use. There's, use the same tools that the bad guys are using. Am I recommending that you plug Claude into your control system? No, just to be clear, I am not saying that. That doesn't mean you can't use AI and tools like that to help you figure things out. You can take an offline PCAP and put it in a local model. There's all sorts of things that you can do. You could find open source tools like the one you're talking about. You guys have with the PCAP analyzer, right? So that's a way that you can do something. And then you start building and tackling. Again, I know we talked about this in Singapore. Most of the OT problems, like it's that 80-20 rule. I think 80% of most people's problems can be solved with 20% of effort. And most of that 20% is basic stuff, right? It's, actually segmenting your network, right? Making sure it's not connecting to the internet, making sure things aren't talking that don't need to be, turn off services that don't need to be running, like, change a password on something, right? Like little things like that. Have an asset inventory, understand what your devices are. What is my firmware level? Update to the latest stable firmware that you can in and out. Like little things like that make a huge difference. And you don't have to buy anything. Right. That costs zero money. It just takes time and effort and attention.
Yeah. And I think a really important thing too is the trust that's required to work closely with the plant facilities team. Right. And I think when you go in there and you just blindly say, or you take this dogmatic stance that, everything has to be patched, and we have to do this broad network scan and it's going to lead to uptime and issues for their lives, right? I think that's why as security professionals, we have to do the work on the front end to say, hey, we did our homework. These are the types of assets that we think are the most concerning. Here's in our asset OT inventory, here are our top players. Like, let's do a more directed effort. Let's do it together. And, with that, we've had a ton of success saying like, okay, let's just assume network compromise, right? Like the easy stuff is great. We should absolutely do it. But assuming that happens, what's the blast radius? And then being a little more specific with the data that you gather to go and say, okay, if someone's able to compromise this perimeter defense, this system is compromised. So what do we do now? We add additional layers of control, compensating controls. We isolate those systems. We ensure that, a compromise to these insecure systems don't lead to a compromise of other assets that are, in similar network, in a similar network segment, right? So I think the big thing is just we really need to buy trust, right? And buying trust means we have to do our homework, and we have to also talk in the same language, which again I've already mentioned is really about uptime, right? That's what we're trying to ensure.
Dude, I say that all the time. I love hearing it, and I love it's something I think needs to get hammered in. Like, I've got hard hats up here, and one of the other things I say all the time is you do business at the speed of trust, right? The faster that you can trust somebody, the faster that they're going to allow you and listen to you. I've told this story 100 times, but we bought a power plant. Not me personally, but the company I worked for bought a power plant, and I was in there, telling the guy that manages all the OT stuff, like, all the things, all the cool stuff we do in OT and how we make it more secure and segment it and all this kind of stuff. And he's just looking across from me. He's like, yeah, you're not doing that here. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, he was completely against it because he didn't trust me. And he had other people like me come in, promise the world, and it ended up breaking, and he would have to undo it or support it and all that. And he was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And then it took a long time for me to actually build that trust. And once I did, which I built trust by connecting with him on some personal matter, but once I built that trust interpersonally, then he would listen to me on the other side, and then I won him over. But it just took that much time. It's why I laugh and say, if you're going to a plant and you're meeting with operations, you should be taking donuts or, pizza or whatever. And it sounds petty, but you're definitely buying their friendship. Like, you definitely are trying to, it's like, bring flowers on your first date. Like, you want to make a good first impression. Yeah. Show them that you appreciate just taking their time to give you the time of day to have a conversation.
Yeah. I would add too, it's like, you don't have these conversations. If you're, in our position, trying to change hearts and minds and improve security, don't have this conversation in some random, air conditioned conference room. It's like, go put your steel toes on and get out there on the floor with them. Right. It's like,
exactly.
You gain trust because you've been in that situation. You understand the risks. And I think that's the whole thing. It's like, we've got to make sure we're pushing the same direction. It's like, and that's why I keep talking about uptime. But I mean, we want this plant to succeed. We want it to make money. We want it to do its whatever critical function. We want to ship product. We all agree on the same thing. I'm trying to represent a really bad day, right? I hope it doesn't happen, but let's make sure when a bad day happens, it's not, a bad week or a bad month, right? Let's get back up and resolve it quickly, isolate it, segment it, all the things to recover in case an incident does happen.
So love all the stuff in the background, by the way, of all that and the electrical engineering nerd in me and technologist in me.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some of the hardware side? I know you were at in Singapore at DEF CON with me, and you were there on the hardware hacking side with the medical devices and things like that. So what types of things are you seeing that people are having struggles with, that you're finding and vulnerable and being taken advantage of in the hardware side?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We do a ton of work with different industries and different technology stacks, and we kind of see it all. But it's interesting how history kind of repeats itself when we start talking about the different kind of vulnerabilities that we see. And as sad as it is to say, OT is kind of on the complete tail end of that for the reasons we've already talked about. But more in like the actual device manufacturing space, it's like, we're starting to see things that were historically academic, theoretical, or incredibly complicated to attack be much easier with, obviously with AI. And then there's been, other technological improvements. I think there are some major, technological advancements on the horizon that we should start considering now. But the biggest thing is that, especially with, devices and products that, are designed in circuit board and shipped out. The issue that we run into all the time is that they're shipped with a certain level of security, and then security moves much faster than that device lifecycle. So we've had issues where, someone goes through all the process of getting like an FDA submission, and their device is end of life before they even get to the point where their device is on the market. And now we're behind the 8-ball because there's all kinds of vulnerabilities and exploits. Support's dropped. It's just a different world. And I think, we see that a lot now, and we're starting to see advancements in at least the medical device manufacturing side is really what I'm talking about here. But that problem I haven't even really heard it get talked about on the OT side of things. Like you mentioned before, really it's about, what is a plant familiar with? What do they have good contracts with? What can they get, parts shipped immediately from and get turned on? It's all about availability and uptime. So they just pull in this and then just inherit all of the technical debt as soon as they pull it in. And there's no consideration about what does an attack vector on this network look like 5 to 10 years from now. It just doesn't exist. It's not even part of the conversation half the time.
No, it's not. And I told you I was in Ohio last week and our week before, whatever. All my weeks kind of merge together as you travel like we do. But, I'm at this facility, and I don't need to say what it is. They blow stuff up and they dispose of things. Let's just put it that way. And I'm walking around and they're showing us the thing, and we're doing, we're grabbing data. We're putting sensors out in places so we can map the network and understand what's going on. and we're tracking down all the different spots. I'm like, oh, well, there's this one cabinet. So we're trying to find a port and an available port in the switch. And there's no available ports in the switch, but there's another Netgear that's sitting right below it. And it's just a hub. And it's one that, they probably went to Walmart and bought it at Walmart because they needed more port density. And, so that's what they did. And that happens so often. And it doesn't just happen on a networking switch. It happens with a computer. It happens with a monitor. It happens with any number of things. And it's not that they're dumb. It's not that they're malicious. It's that it's 2:00 in the morning. The site's down. The IT guys, they're going to say, yeah, order one. I'll get it to you in 30 days or a week or 2 weeks. No, I need it now. I can't wait a week. And they don't have inventory on site. So they don't even call anymore. They just go to the local store. They buy whatever they can get, or they go to their house and pull something out to plug it in because it needs to work. The plant can't get up and running potentially because this thing is not working. And then once the flip side of that is once it's in there and it's working, they're not going to remove it because it's working. And if I take it out, it's going to break. So they just leave it and it's just there now. Right. And getting it out after that is going to be really hard. So that goes back to the whole trust thing, right? If they had a trusting relationship with their IT and their supply chain, they could potentially get something, or maybe they'd want to swap it out. But many times they just put it in and they just go on about their day. Like it's not high risk, but they just brought all of these risks in with that thing they plugged in and they don't even realize it. Cause as we know, there could be back doors. It could be pinging out. Like there's all sorts of things that could happen. They don't understand what they just did unintentionally.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you bring up an interesting point too. It's trust the other direction too, because what should happen is that once we get enough trust to actually build a robust OT inventory, we understand the assets that are out there. They may be insecure and we can work to fix that. But, day 2 or 3 of that endeavor is backup solutions, standard operating procedures. This is what happens when this thing goes down. And that's where IT folks and, more OT centric people can be super productive there, because these are all things that, again, it's what I'm talking about before. It's like we've solved these problems. We just have to apply these problems and these solutions to the OT space. Right. And I think, again, it takes trust in, we have to be trusted as the OT professionals and the OT security folks, but then we also need, they need to trust us as well, that we're going to produce good standard operating procedures to help them keep their plant running without, introducing all this shadow IT and all the technical debt and risk associated with that.
So are you seeing like the futurization of components and how do you fast track that? Like you just mentioned, like, hey, I designed a chip or a widget, especially when you're talking, in medical devices. How are we able to keep up with that as fast as things are changing? When it takes so long to get things FDA approved and through all of the check boxes to be actually produced. And by the time it gets there, it's end of life. Like that's insane. How much money, time, effort, engineering, R&D, and now you got to scrap it. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it is insane. And, it's a really tough question because these things do need to operate. Like a medical device is a great example. OT is a similar example as well, but a medical device could be an implantable device that's, obviously implanted in a patient for years, right? You don't want to introduce extra risk by pulling that out. OT is risky. It's not as risky as that, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like, you don't really want to touch it again, but the problem is that, you have to. And I think that honestly, to answer your question, we have to get better about, designing, a mechanism, or even like a digital twin or like a replicated lab simulation type environment, leveraging, the beauty of AI and all the great progressions there, to really have a better understanding of our infrastructure, and we can test things in a realistic enough fashion. And that's how we can, be very specific and tactical about what we're trying to do. That way, when we start deploying patches and updates, it's less risky inherently. And I think that's just the culture we have to get in, is actually touching these things more consistently, which means we need to do our homework and understanding what they are and how we're actually improving the situation.
Man, there's so many problems, again, obviously it's job security, I guess, right?
Right, yeah.
It's not going to go away. We're not going to replace all the devices. And as soon as we do, you saw the Mythos thing come out. Like, just because it's not vulnerable today doesn't mean it's not vulnerable. It doesn't mean it really just means you don't know that it's vulnerable today, because there's never been a time where something is secure. The only way it's secure is if it's turned off and unplugged and no power and sitting in the corner, right? It's not, you can't secure. It's the analogy I always give is like your house, right? I have a front door. I could put the most expensive, steel door, reinforced, laser guided, all this kind of stuff. But given enough time and opportunity, somebody can get through it. It's just inevitable. Like, you can drive a truck through it. Like, I can go to the back door. Like, I can dig underneath. I can, go in from the roof. Like, there's all different ways that I can go through, given enough time and opportunity. And it's the same thing with cyber. If I can constantly just sit there and try passwords and it's never going to log me out, I'll eventually guess your password. It may take me a long ass time, but eventually I'll catch it, right? And that's where quantum speeds those things up. But that's why you need complex passwords, because if your password's 5 characters, it doesn't take that long to guess it.
Yeah.
If it's 20 characters and it's got exclamation
Right.
points and all the things, then it's a lot harder to guess or to start going through.
Yeah. And I would advocate as well. I mean, it's defense in depth, and don't be a soft target. Right. It's like, don't put, some janky PLC that has all kinds of unauthenticated protocols and FTP and things like that, just completely on the edge and leave it up. Right. Do basic stuff, like you always say. So secure that. Don't be a soft target, and then understand defense in depth. Right. Assume a compromise of a perimeter firewall. What's the worst thing that could happen? What do we do? What's the backup policy? What do we do to deploy a patch? What do we do? To maintain the safety and reliability of the actual plant, if something were to happen. I think that's the conversation, because you and I certainly would not suggest to spend your way into oblivion and make a plant completely unusable. That's not, we're not going to get any trust like that whatsoever. It's about, what do we do as bite-sized pieces, and how do we integrate into, the plant operations to do this in an effective manner? Because again, we already talked about it's time sensitive. These things are kind of out there sitting ducks right now. So, it's urgent, but we can't just push everything all at once. So that's the balance that, you and I have to play as OT security professionals to do this systematically, and with intent.
Dude, you hit on something right there that I call out sometimes, but the fact that I can over secure something that makes it so difficult it's unusable. Right. If I make it so complex that the process fails and the users can't actually use the thing, again, imagine a door. Imagine if I had so much security to get to my front door that I had to have, there were like 34 locks, and, you had to have a password, you had to give blood, they had to take your EKG. It's just like, wait, I want to do that every time I walk in the door, for every person that comes in the door, and their different keys and biometrics. It's like, no, I don't need all of that. Like, you need to make it as simple as possible while still securing. And then the flip side of that coin is also cost. If I make it, I can make it security I can over secure something. I can, gold plate something. But if the site, let's say that a site makes $10, if I make that cost, I'm making $10 in revenue. Well, if I make it $30 more expensive, then they just lost all of their revenue. Then it doesn't even make sense to do business, just close down. So if I make the security cost so expensive that they don't even make profit anymore, then of course they're going to choose to not secure it, because if I secure it what you're recommending me to do at the levels you are, then I can't make profit. I might as well just close the business, right? So there's got to be you've got to understand as cyber professionals, you can't just walk in with security at all costs, because there's a time cost, there's an ability and availability cost. And then there's just as you said, understanding the process and that trust cost of, this is our business and this is how it functions. And if it doesn't function anymore, then it's not a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that made me think of something as well that I run into a lot of conversations, and I'm sure you do as well, where it's like, okay, well, let's get to the level of maturity, and then like, we're good. We've reached it. We reached the maturity. Awesome. And that's really making sure that that's not the goal, right? The goal is a mature process for adhering to risk. You already talked about it as well. The threat landscape is moving 1,000 miles an hour right now. Oh shoot, I turned my camera on. My bad. The threat landscape's moving 1,000 miles an hour right now. So if you don't integrate that as part of your process and you don't constantly make sure that you're at a security maturity level in terms of the actual threat surface of your infrastructure, then you've missed the mark, right? That's not what maturity looks like. Maturity looks like a process for adhering to risks that change because they're changing every day, right? So that's an important takeaway, I think, too, for organizations. And it's frustrating too, because you'd love to just buckle down, get all this stuff done, redo a plant, and be like, okay, great, this plant's secure, now don't touch it for 20 years. Unfortunately, that's just not how it works.
Yeah. And we have to understand those things, or you're going, and this is the funny thing where I see, folks that work with me when we walk into these places and they're like, oh, this is what you have to do. And I'm just like, no, they don't. Like, they don't have to patch it. They don't have to get rid of the Windows XP box. And the fact that you're so offended that they have Windows XP tells them everything they need to know, that you have no idea how their business works, right? And if you thought that was the worst thing that we're going to find here, you're sorely mistaken. Like, many times it's way worse than that. And the fact that you're getting all hot and bothered because there's a Windows XP box in the corner, that tells them everything they need to know, that they can't trust you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely bad. I don't want to go on record saying I would advocate Windows XP boxes by any means, but I mean, you can't.
I agree.
You have to if you want it to ever change, then you have to go about it the right way. And I think your point is being dogmatic about something as basic as like a Windows XP. It's like, that's not the way. That's not the way to actually make any changes to actually happen.
I had a heated conversation with a guy actually when we were in Singapore, and he came over and he was looking at the OT wall, and we were talking OT, and he had been an OT in his past, and we got to talking about open protocols and why aren't they using secure protocols, and he was just flabbergasted that we still use open protocols. And he's like, well, it's been 20 years. Like, why haven't they solved that? I'm like, no, time out. We have secure protocols. Like, OT uses secure protocols, just not always. And he was like, but why? And I tried to explain it to him a bit. Sometimes you need availability, and sometimes that encryption process can make it take too long and it breaks the process, whatever. But let's get beyond that. Let's pretend that you could do it. I said, sometimes in OT, I said, OT is like your 3-month-old baby. It's vulnerable. It can't change its own diaper. It poops itself. It needs to be cleaned. It has to be fed. Like, you put it in a crib that locks it up. You put monitoring on it. Like, that it can't take care of itself. That doesn't mean that you throw the baby away because it can't take care of itself. You know that about it. So you put all these other things to monitor and take care of it. And somebody's watching it and feeding it and burping it and checking on it all the time. Like, that's how we should treat our OT. And that's not to degrade OT, like it's a baby, but it's an analogy just to show, I know these vulnerabilities. I know these limitations. I know these things are there. How can we protect it anyways? Again, we do it with babies all the time. I've got 3 kids, and somehow now they can change their own diaper, or they don't wear a diaper. They can change their own pants. They can make their own food, all the things, right? They got through that stage because I protected them at that space so that they could grow out and do it on their own. And that's how we should nurture our OT environments, is knowing that I can't boil the ocean. I can't just replace my 3-month-old with a 20-year-old. I have to be able to grow it to be a 20-year-old. And most of our OT environments are that baby that we need to mature it, and it's going to take time.
Yeah, I agree. And then the part that makes our jobs very complicated is that, it's still vulnerable, right? At the end of the day, it's vulnerable until the point that we secure it, right? So the solution's not being dogmatic. The solution is exactly what you're saying, and cultivating a culture of trust to actually make those changes, because they're just sitting there right now, all vulnerable and wallowing in their own open protocols, I'll say. So yeah, that's the world that we live in.
It is. And it's fun. I love what we do. I think we've made a big, from a understanding perspective. I think more and more folks really see what we're doing, how we're doing it. I think more and more people understand that OT is a risk. I think more people are talking about OT than, 10, 15 years ago when the term barely even existed. So those are all good things. Unfortunately, I still see, budgets lacking or lagging behind an OT. They're improving in some organizations, but others are still struggling. But that's why I do this podcast. It's why I bring people on like you to be able to have these kind of conversations of what are the downfalls? What are things that you can do? It's not the end of the world. You can do it on shoestring budgets. You can find products like the ones you guys have for companies that can't afford the big guys. That doesn't mean you can't do something like grab their product, plug it in, start seeing what's there, do some analysis on things and make some simple changes. That's going to get you, maybe out of the diapers and into training pants. Like take those baby steps, like literally to get yourself into that next mature step process.
Yeah, I agree. And, I appreciate obviously this conversation and what you do, in the OT space, because I think this is ultimately what changes the hearts and minds is more people talking about it and being pragmatic about the actual solution as well. So yeah, again, thank you for having me. Thank you for the work that you do. I know you are over at the ICS Village all the time at DEF CON. So love to see you guys every time I'm out there, and looking forward to it again this year.
Yeah, man. So what's the couple things? Let's go with the question I ask everyone. What's the one thing coming up over the horizon that's maybe concerning? And what's one thing that's maybe exciting that you see in our space?
Ooh. I mean, concerning has to be just AI. I mean, Mythos is, I know everyone's tired of talking about it, but I mean, it's less about Mythos and more about just the acceleration of vulnerability detection with AI. And if you obliterated models, the ability to just run whatever you want without guardrails is extremely scary in the hands of anybody, much less an adversary that actually wants to cause harm. So absolutely the thing that I'm the most concerned about. And excited. I mean, I think in general, people are starting to see it more. I've been in this for a while now, and I remember, talking about cybersecurity more like I was an insurance salesman. No offense to insurance or anything, but it's like, it's hard to tell people that these things exist. And, unfortunately, sometimes, these actual events that happen, and these major, reputable hacks, kind of push people towards that direction. But I think people kind of see the technological improvements and advancements over, the last couple of years, and they understand that, security is absolutely something we should really care about, and it's hitting every industry, in a way that I don't know if I've had the same level of vigor, regarding security that I've had in my career. So excited to see that. Hopefully it continues to progress because it's going to be necessary, with the changing landscape of adversaries and threats.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, AI is usually the answer. Unfortunately, it's not wrong though, because it can be the good and the bad, both sides of the same coin. If it's used, we have to use it because they're using it. So if we don't, they're going to use it against us and we're going to be behind the eight ball. So, all right. So what's call to action? How do people get a hold of you? We'll put the links for the things, but definitely talk about anything, the GitHub, your OTPCAP, whatever you want folks to know about you guys and your company.
Yeah, sounds good. SolaSec.io. We post blog posts talking about stuff that we find interesting. LinkedIn, Caleb Davis on LinkedIn as well. Yeah. And then, we're at all these conferences. So we love just talking to people and meeting face to face as well. So by all means, swing by, obviously go check out OT and ICS Village if you're ever in a conference where they're at. And then, I spend a lot of my time in the biohacking village. So we've got some cool stuff planned for DEF CON this year as well. So any of those things, we'd love to meet up with some folks in person as well.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, brother, I appreciate your time today. I'm sure we'll see each other soon as we live pretty close to each other, and we'll both be at DEF CON and all the things. So thank you for your time today, yes, and keep up the good fight, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you having me. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us on Protect It All, where we explore the crossroads of IT and OT cybersecurity. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to stay ahead in this ever-evolving field. Until next time.